Hello everyone, welcome to the lecture number 45 of this NPTEL lecture series on charging infrastructure, and today we will continue our discussion on transformer design, what we have started in the last lecture. So in the last lecture we have seen different basic principles related to transformer, some of the basic principles which actually help us in defining the different parameters which are used for physically realizing the transformer. Then we have seen the losses associated with it. There we have seen we have two kinds of losses, core loss and winding loss, or you can say copper loss. And in the core loss again we have seen there are two kinds of losses. We have seen hysteresis losses and our eddy current losses. Both losses we have seen, and we have seen in what on what factors those, on what parameters those losses depends. And since the eddy current and hysteresis losses cannot be measured separately, or it is difficult to segregate them, that is why the manufacturers generally provide the core loss defined as K core multiplied by del B raised to power beta ACLC, where this is nothing but the volume of the core. So generally they provide a curve in the data sheet of core material. They will provide a curve indicating core loss per unit volume. Per unit volume they will say generally defines watt per centimeter cube, in watt per centimeter cube. It is generally a logarithmic curve where both the x and y axis have been indicated in the logarithmic manner, and on the right hand side we have, on the x axis we have delta B, which is peak of the AC flux, magnetic flux density. So that is for different delta V you will get different core loss per unit volume of the core, and then for different frequencies this curve will be plotted, and then depending upon your frequency of operation of your system you can select, you can also select what will be the frequency of operation of your system, and you can also select what is the peak magnetic flux density, and accordingly you can select the core loss per unit volume in the core made up of the core material. And then from that, once you realize what will be the different core dimensions, you can calculate the core volume, and there from there you can predict the core losses. So this is what we have seen in the last class. Again it depends, this particular expression is for a particular sinusoidal excitation frequency, and it may vary for different for different frequencies. This curves for different frequencies, this traces for different frequencies. So for one particular frequency the value of the constant K core, which is nothing but a constant, it depends upon the, for different frequency of excitation this K core value will be different. Now if you see, in order to physically realize the transformer, our main outcome will be, while doing the design, the outcome will be the size of the core, which includes core cross section area we have represented by AC. The window area we will see later, it will be defined by WA. We will also see what you mean by window area. Then mean length per turn, which is given by generally abbreviated in the form of MLT. We will also see what you mean by MLT, and magnetic path length, which is given as LC, as of now what we have discussed. Then we have number of turns. Again for different windings it will be different, so it will define N1, N2 and so on. Let us say if there are k number of windings, so it will be up to Nk. And then finally one should able to understand what will be the size of wire, that means what will be the cross sectional area of the wire which is being used. Obviously mostly it will be the copper wire having enamel coating to provide the required isolation. Then we also need to calculate the peak flux density. We also must know what will be peak flux density, because depending upon peak flux density our core loss and our winding loss are dependent on this peak flux density, and we have to now select the optimum value of peak flux density such that the obviously system must not go to saturation. The peak flux density should be well within the maximum saturation value of the magnetic flux density for that particular material, and at the same time swing in the BH curve is enormously larger. So we must have the considerable amount of core losses and considerable amount of winding losses. So thus we have to find the optimum value of this peak flux density, which ensures that both the core loss and windings loss, or you can say the total loss in the transformer, is as minimal as possible. So then we have understood, in order to identify these things, there are some quantities which we will get it from the specification. We will see what are those quantities. Along with that, there are other quantities which has to be determined by first principles. So for that, we have defined our core loss, which is proportional to delta V peak flux density, and then we have defined the delta V, which is the peak flux density expression. This will give my number of turns to be lambda 1 by 2 delta V AC, where AC is the area of cross section of the core. So this maximum flux density must be ensured that it is must be equal to this swing in the BH loop will be such that the delta B which we will get must be equal to lambda 1 by 2 N1 AC, and it should obviously making sure that delta B is less than B set. So that means accordingly we have to select the number of turns such that this delta B is well within the B set value. At the same time, this delta B, the swing in the flux density, must have the optimum value of this maximum flux density swing, or you can say the peak value of this magnetic flux density. So the transformer has multiple windings and which are wound over the core, and this winding, assume we have, let us say, k number of windings in a transformer, so that we can make it more generalized case. So assume we have k number of windings and they has to be accumulated in the entire window area, and that window area, this is given by WA. Now what is this window area? We see this is nothing but the area where all these windings sits, or all the turns in the winding sits. So if you see from this side, it will have something like, it will have something like this. This is nothing but the hash portion. If you see from this side, the hash portion is nothing but the called as the window area, and that window area is given by WA. So this is for a U core, U kind of core. Now one example of that, I can show one example on that. So if you look this particular transformer, we have the core, as I mentioned, we have the core. So these are EE core. When you keep two EE cores, it will looks like, it will complete the entire core. And then this is the thing, this white color thing is nothing but the bobbin over which this particular core is been mounted. Again, this is non-metallic, made up of non-metallic material. And now if you look very carefully, it is this area which is nothing but the window area, you can say, where our windings is actually residing, or you can say winding, you put your winding in this and then you take down on this side and then again take it up and then again take it to this side. So it is this area and this area which actually constitute the window area. So this is actually the one of the window, and it can house maximum, x number of turns with a particular size of copper wire. So that is why it is this area which is called as the window area. In E core you have two windows and both the windows have the same area, same value of area. In case of C core or U core, you have just one window which is shown over here in this particular, this is the window area which we are talking about. Now since we have k number of windings, we need to accommodate them in this entire window area WA. So now we have to allocate the fraction of the window area for each winding, and let us take that fraction to be as the term as gamma. Now this gamma j is the nothing but the fraction of the window area in the entire window area WA, which has been allotted to winding number j. So for example, assume, let us say we have k windings which are been put in here. So these these are the turns of those individual windings which are there, the individual copper wire which are going and then coming back. This is second turn, third turn, fourth turn, like that turns are being placed, and out of this entire window area we have defined only the fraction of that particular window area. It has been allotted to the winding 1, and that particular area we can define it to be nothing but, that fraction is nothing but gamma 1 WA. Similarly for winding 2, if we take, we have allotted only this particular portion, and that we can define to be gamma 2 WA, and then we can then define our this for winding j, which is gamma j WA, and this is for winding k, it is gamma k WA. In the entire window area, we have defined some portion to winding 1, some portion to winding 2, so on, some portion to winding k, and that particular portion is defined as nothing but gamma 1 WA, gamma 2 WA, and so on. Now this fraction, which is nothing but a gamma, it has to satisfy certain condition. Now this gamma, assume for a generalized winding j, this fraction allotted to winding j should be between 0 and 1. That means when the gamma becomes 0, it indicates that there is no area which has been allotted to that jth winding, which is not the case, because generally when we have winding in our transformer, so there will be some number of turns corresponding to that winding. So some amount of area has to be allotted to that particular winding. So that is why this gamma j has to be greater than 0. At the same time, we cannot make gamma equal to 1, because the moment we gave gamma equal to 1, that means we are now allotting the entire WA or entire window area to that particular winding, and that shows that we do not have any other winding in the transformer, and generally we have at least 2 windings in our transformer. So the gamma value has to be vary between 0 and 1. Now this j, here we can write for winding number 1, 2, 3, and so on going up to k. So this is what we have understood. Now at the same time, what we can say is that the summation of all those fractions of the window area allotted has to be equal to 1, because we can write down that gamma 1 omega WA plus gamma 2 WA and so on, gamma k WA is nothing but equal to WA, because the fraction of window area which is allotted to individual winding has to be sum up and become equal to the window area itself. So this entire summation, when we do it, becomes equal to the window area, and which indicates when we remove this WA term, it will become gamma 1 plus gamma 2 plus gamma 3 goes up to gamma k, and that is nothing but equal to 1, which is what we have written over there. So gamma must satisfy two conditions. One is obviously it should be between 0 and 1, and the summation of all the individual gammas, that means individual fraction of the window area allotted to individual winding, has to be equal to 1. That means summation of a fraction of the window area allotted to individual winding has to be equal to 1. Then, so if we try to define the copper loss, we know that the windings have copper loss, and that can be defined as I square RMS times the resistance of the winding, which is been offered by the winding. So we can write the copper loss in jth winding depends upon the Rj, which is the resistance of that jth winding, and this Rj, if we neglect the AC effects, I mean high frequency AC effect, we neglect the high frequency AC effect, which are skin effect and proximity effect. If we neglect that, then our resistance of the winding is given as rho Lj by Awj, where Awj is the cross section area of the wire used in the jth winding, Lj is the length of the wire used for wound the winding j, and rho is the wire resistivity. Generally if you take a copper, so that material has the wire resistivity, which again depends upon the temperature of operation, in which temperature you are keeping it, and you have this Ij, which is nothing but the RMS value of current in the winding j. So this is the RMS value of current which is flowing in the jth winding. So we can define the copper loss in the jth winding to be I square R, where I is nothing but the RMS current flowing in the jth winding. Now we can also define the length and cross section of the wires which are used in different windings as, let us define the length and cross sectional area of the wire used in, let us say, winding J to be this length of the wire Lj, we can define it to be Nj multiplied by MLT. Now this MLT is nothing but mean length per turn, and this is nothing but number of turns of the jth winding, where we can say that the Lj is nothing but the length of the wire which is been used to wound the winding J, is the length of wire used for jth winding. Similarly, we can also say that the cross sectional area of the wire, let us say if we are using the circular wire, then this is nothing but the area of cross section of that particular wire. Assume for the jth winding is nothing but equal to the amount of the window area which is been given multiplied by the fraction of allotted area to the jth winding multiplied by, there is a factor which is Ku, and then this is divided by Nj, where again Nj is the number of turns, the Wa is the window area, gamma j is the fraction of the window area allotted to winding J, and Ku is nothing but a factor which is called as the window fill factor. So, we can say that this is the area of cross section of the wire in jth winding. Wa is nothing but the window area, gamma j is nothing but the fraction of window area allotted to jth winding, Nj is nothing but the number of turns of jth winding, and this Ku is nothing but is the winding fill factor. Now, this winding fill factor will be less than 1. Why? Because the reason of introduction of this winding fill factor is nothing but we have the copper wire which we are using to wound the winding, and that copper wire is having the enamel coating, and so whenever we are accommodating those wires within that window area, there are some portions which we will not be able to use, and this is because windings have enamel coating, and once you wound one of the turns and you are placing the next turn, then you will not able to use the exact space in the window area. Plus the winding conductors are circular in nature, so they are not able to completely take up the window area. So that is why there is a term called as the winding fill factor. And also if you see, if you, when you have the circular conductor which are being placed nearby each other, so there is some area which is not being utilized, this particular area which is not being utilized, and that will nothing but contribute to the winding fill factor, and this winding fill factor is obviously less than 1, and generally as per literature this winding fill factor is nothing but equal to 0.5 for low voltage round wire conductor. It is equal to 0.65 for low voltage foil winding, that means whenever you are using foil to wound the particular winding. Also this Ku is equal to 0.1 for high voltage transformer winding. So now if you look very carefully, we have understood all the terms which are given over there, but one term which is the mean length per turn is something which we have to obtain, or which we have to have the understanding that what is the meaning of this mean length per turn. So now let us see and understand what is the meaning of mean length per turn. Now if you look very carefully, it is this area through which the windings are wounded, through which the windings are placed. In this area the windings are being placed, one turn is going into it and then coming back from the other side comes out, and then the second turn goes into it from the other side, comes out, and then this is the area where your windings are being made. And if you take the bobbin, the same bobbin we are showing over here, the this bobbin will look something like this. From here my core goes in. If you are having E core, one of the middle leg, if you are having a E core, So if this is the, if this is our E core, so the middle leg is actually going through the space provided in the middle. The other side legs will be going through this place. These are for side legs and this is for middle leg. It is going through this particular area, and if you look very carefully, windings will be wounded in this way, in this direction. One turn comes there, from there comes here, second turn, third turn. So if we see from the top side, it will be something like, it will look like this. We have this middle area, which is this area we are talking about, this free area we have, where our E core central leg will go into it, and then you are putting winding. So let us take winding. So the first winding will be, you know, will be wounded in this manner over this one. The winding will be wounded like this, first winding, and then you have second winding, you have third winding, fourth winding, and it goes on. You know, if you look from here, from this side, so this is the place where you can place first winding, first layer of winding, then the second, third, fourth, fifth, and it goes so on. And finally at this place where our core side legs comes in, till that point we will be placing the different layers of winding in this window area. So that is why we have, you know, we have different layer from here to here, and finally it is this area where our core side legs resides. So this is core side legs. So assume that worst case scenario, our last winding will be placed, obviously it will have some curvature. Last winding will be placed something like this, and let us define this length to be, let us say, from the bobbin dimension you can easily get, let us define this length to be, you know, to be E. And if we take in this one, so our mean length per turn will be somewhere, it is this place where our mean, the average value, or you can say the mean value of the length of the turns. First turn is here, last turn is here, which is, you know, up till the core side legs we have. So let us define some of the dimensions and then try to write for the E core type of structure what will be the MLT. So this is my E, and here if you see this place where our windings are wounded, this particular winding generally has, if you look very carefully, this winding will be like, you know, you have a copper conductor over which you have the insulation layer, which is the enamel layer insulation, and let us take the length of this insulation layer to be I. I is the, you can say, width of insulation layer over the copper winding, which is over the copper. So this is the copper conductor actually. Now let us say this is the dimension E. Let us take this dimension which is going from here till this point to be D, and then we can then define, you know, assume we have this curvature here, because, you know, windings when they are wounded, so they will look like curvature, and assume the radii of this curvature to be A. So A is the radii of the curvature of the, you know, winding when it is winded. So we have 4 this kind of area like this. Now in this winding also, if you see in this winding also, it will have the copper in between, and then you have enamel coating insulation which is there, and this again has the width I, this insulation layer over the copper conductor. So this also has the same kind of thing. So then we can then find the mean length per turn, which corresponds to this green color dotted line we have drawn. So this mean length per turn will be, so if you look very carefully, this is my radii A, which is taking this curvature, has radii A, and it is a quarter. You know, this is the 4 ends, 1, 2, 3, 4. So here we have 4 curvatures at the, which are, you can say, roughly at 90 degrees, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 at 90 degrees. So we can say the length traveled by, or you can say transverse by by the curvature part, you can just take 2 pi, our radii which is a, which is been given, it is 4 times, and since it is just travelling the quarter part, so it is divided by 4 we have. Now if this is the length transferred by the curvature for the extreme winding, similarly it will be the same thing for the nearest winding as well. So we can say the mean length transfers by the curvature part will be equal to, here we can just cut down this 4. So we will get 2 pi a divided by 2, which will give us pi a. So in MLT we can just write pi a, which actually constitutes curvature part, the mean length covered by the curvature part of this winding, which is winded in the entire window area, starting from the one side at the wall of bobbin, on the other side the side legs of the core. And here we have assumed, if we see in all these considerations, we have assumed that our windings are completely being covered in the entire window area, or we can say the window area is completely gets accommodated by the winding. So that is the assumption we have taken. Now this will be nothing but, so it is the first winding we can take, so it is the 1 and 2 side D, so it is 2D, plus if you see the insulation, so it is here one insulation will come, top one insulation will come, bottom side 2 insulations will come, so it is 4I, this is the insulating part, plus this side. So this side we have taken because this side also is D. Now we have to take the horizontal part, which is nothing but 2E, 1E this side, second E this side, and then you have in this side you have insulation here, insulation here, insulation placed over here, insulation placed over here. So it is 4I we have got. And since we have to do the mean length, so we can then, this side we can take, and this one side, second side we can take 2, since we have one will be there on the inner side, another one will be at the outmost side, so it is multiplied by 2, and then finally we have to take the mean value, so it is divided by 2. Why this 4I is there? Because generally the copper conductor will be there at the top, copper conductor will be there at the bottom, this side insulation is there, this side insulation is there, so it is, you can say 1I, 2I, 3I, 4I, and this is again, this is bobbins middle area having E, this thing. So I am drawing this part here. So the windings will be going in this direction with the isolation at the top and the isolation at the bottom. So this is nothing but the value of MLT. You can define this value of mean length per turn for the E type of cores which are housed in this kind of bobbins. Similarly, for different kinds of core, like for PQ core, you can define the mean length per turn. So like this, one can define mean length per turn for that particular core size. Now after defining our mean length per turn and our length of the wire which is been used in the winding, and also defining the term area of cross section of the wire, now let us define our resistance of jth winding. Now this resistance we can write down it to be, Rj to be nothing but rho Lj by AWJ, where AWJ is nothing but the area of cross section of the wire which is being used to wound that particular winding, and Lj is the length of the wire which is being used in that particular jth winding. Now this we know that Lj is nothing but Nj times MLT, and we know that AWJ is nothing but WA KU gamma j by Nj. So we can then write our Rj value to be equal to rho Nj square times MLT divided by window area Ku times gamma j. Now the resistance what we obtain over here is neglecting the AC effect, because if the AC effect comes into picture, then you have to also take down this skin effect and proximity effect, but for simplicity we are now just taking only the DC resistance part. So, the copper loss of the jth winding is nothing but PCUJ is nothing but Nj square, and we can write the Ij square rho MLT divided by WAKU gamma j, where Ij is nothing but the RMS current rating of the jth winding. So, then we can write, once we know our copper loss which is happening in the jth winding, we can then write the total copper loss of the k windings to be equal to PCU total is nothing but PCU1 in the first winding, PCU2 in the second winding, and so on going up to PCUK. Now, this when we put these values from this particular expression, what we gonna get is rho MLT will come out divided by WA KU, and then you have a summation going from 1 to K bracket Nj square Ij square divided by gamma j. And then this particular expression we can then write down to be PCU total is nothing but rho MLT divided by WAKU, and we can now write our Nj to be nothing but the turns ratio between the jth winding and the first winding, or you can say the primary winding, multiplied by number of turns in the primary winding, and this is nothing but the turns ratio which is given in the specification, or you can obtain it from the specification, or you can easily obtain it from the circuit operation. So, generally we will be knowing this turns ratio. So, from turns ratio we can equate this Nj to be equal to this multiplied by number of turns in the first winding, because we do not know what is the number of turns in the different windings, but we know the turns ratio, and that we will see once we will see the procedure how to determine the transformer. From there we can understand how we can obtain the turns ratio. So, this particular part we can write rho MLT divided by WAKU, we can input this value over here, N1 square comes out, and this will be nothing but J equal to 1 to K Nj by N1, that is nothing but the turns ratio times Ij square divided by gamma j, where Ij is nothing but your RMS value of current in the jth winding, and gamma j is nothing but the fraction of the window area which has been allotted to the jth winding. Now, if you look very carefully, this PCU total in this particular part, when we plot this particular copper loss with respect to gamma 1, just with respect to the fraction of area allotted to the first winding, when we do, so what we will see is that the copper loss corresponding to the winding 1 is actually infinity when this gamma 1 is 0. It is actually saying that when the gamma 1 is 0, the area allotted to the winding 1 is equal to 0. That means you can say that the area of cross section of the wire which is been used is 0. So, that means the area of cross section of the wire is actually 0. So, we can say that our core loss for the winding 1, that means PCU1, is actually very large, and the moment it reaches to gamma equal to 1, this particular copper loss becomes smaller, because gamma 1 equal to 1 indicates that the entire window area allotted to the winding 1, that means we can now use the thicker conductor, and that is when our area of cross section of the wire increases, and that is when our copper loss reduces, because value of DC resistance reduces. So, what we can say is that from this one, that the PCU1 with respect to gamma 1 varies like this. At the same time, when we are making the gamma 1 reaches to 1, what it indicates, the value of gamma 2 to gamma 3 to gamma k is actually going towards 0, or you are reducing those values. That means the amount of area allotted to the winding 2, 3, 4 up to k is actually very less, and that is when we have to use very thin wires, and which indicates the higher amount of DC resistance, and thus our copper loss in other windings will be more. So we can say that summation of other copper losses is actually rising. Like this we can say this is nothing but PCU2 plus PCU3 and goes on up to PCUK, it actually rising with respect to the gamma 1, or you can say the area allotted to the winding 1. Now if we do the summation, the total copper loss, if we see, it will be something like going down and then again going up. So this is nothing but your PCU total, and this particular point where it is minimal value is nothing but gamma 1 optimum value. That means there will be one point, gamma 1 optimum point, where you have the minimum total copper losses. Similarly, you can obtain the gamma 2 optimum value, gamma 3 optimum value, and so on. So one must has to do certain kind of optimization. It could be linear optimization or some advanced algorithms of optimization, and can able to obtain what could be the minimum or optimum value of gamma 1. For that your total copper loss is minimal. So that is first optimization which you have to do in order to ensure you have the minimal copper loss. That means you have to obtain the optimum value of fraction of winding allotted in the window area such that the total copper loss is minimal. Similarly, you will get the different gamma values such that the total copper loss will be minimal. So this particular expression we can now use our maximum flux density expression. That means we can now put N1 to be lambda 1 by 2 delta B AC, and that will give you nothing but PCU total to be nothing but equal to rho MLT divided by WA KU N1. So that means lambda square 4 delta B square and area of cross section of the core, this going into 1 to K, and then turns ratio, which is the specified value given in the specification, Ij square divided by gamma j. If you look from this particular expression, what it indicates, our PCU total is actually inversely proportional to the delta V square. Using this particular expression, if we see, so we will get our total copper loss is inversely proportional to delta B square, and at the same time one has to do the optimization to obtain the optimum value of gamma 1, gamma 2, gamma 3, and so on up to gamma k. That means the optimum value of the fraction of the area allotted to individual k windings. So we have seen the core loss and the winding copper losses, or the copper losses which is happening in the winding. So we can now write the total power loss in a transformer which is comprising of the core and the winding is nothing but P total is nothing but P core. That means the core loss which is happening in the core and the winding loss which is happening in the winding due to the resistance of the winding. So and we know that from this particular expression that our core loss is nothing but proportional to delta B raised to power beta, where beta is the material property, varies between 2.5 to 2.7 value, and we have the total copper loss which is nothing but proportional to 1 by delta B square. So when we plot our losses with respect to delta B or with respect to the peak value of AC flux density, what we will see is that our PCU total, our copper loss, total copper loss is reducing with the delta B with the variation 1 by delta B square, while on the other hand our P core is increasing with the increasing the value of the AC flux density, and which is nothing but our P core. So when we do summation of that to obtain the overall total loss, so this is nothing but our P total. We will see that there is some minimum value of this P total, and that particular point is nothing but the optimum value of delta B. So what we see, when we increase the delta B, our core losses increases while our copper losses reduces. However, there is a optimum value of delta B for where the total loss which is combining of the core loss and the winding copper loss is nothing but the minimum value, and that is what one need to find. So we need to find optimum value of delta B for which our P total is minimum. And one way by which you can do is you can then differentiate this P total with respect to delta B by representing that in the form of delta B the P core and PCU total, and then you can equate it to 0. So that implies my variation of P core with respect to delta B is nothing but equal to minus of PCU by delta B PCU. So from this particular expression, when we differentiate this, we will and equate to 0, we will get this particular expression, and when we will solve this particular thing will result in delta B optimum value, and we can then use this delta B optimum value is used to obtain the P total minimal or P total minimum, or you can say minimum value of total transformer losses or total losses in the transformer. So this indicates that we have to then do the second level of optimization, where we have to find out the optimum value of delta B, which will give you the minimum total loss in the transformer. So in these two lectures, what we understood is that there are some understanding we have obtained, which is nothing but our P core, or you can say the core loss of in the transformer is nothing but we obtained that expression K core delta B raised to beta AC LC. Second, we have obtained the PCU total value, which is again proportional to 1 by delta B square, and we have obtained maximum AC flux density, or the maximum value of this flux swing we obtain as lambda 1 by 2 N1 AC. And we know that we have to do two level of optimization. In first optimization, we have to obtain the optimum value of gamma 1, gamma 2 going up to gamma k optimum value. That is first optimization one has to do, and then you have to do the delta B optimal optimization such that this particular lead to the minimum total loss in the transformer, where this one will give you the minimum copper loss in the transformer winding. So one can use this particular optimization, some advanced level optimizations, or some simple optimizations to obtain the optimum value of delta V and the optimum value of gamma 1, gamma 2, gamma 3, gamma k. And this optimum value of delta V, we can then use it to obtain the required number of turns for the primary winding, and then using the turns ratio we can obtain the number of turns in different windings. So this is what we have understood, and we will develop the steps to physically realize your high frequency transformer model or high frequency transformer. So we will define the steps following which one can physically realize the transformer. Thank you very much for patiently listening to this lecture. We will meet you in the next lecture.